Welcome to Dungeon Master. That's why you came, was to hear me say welcome to Dungeon Master, isn't it? That's the whole reason you came to see this, is for me to say welcome to Dungeon Master. Well, just guess what? I don't care if you came to see that or hear that or not. I'll still say it next time, but you won't hear me say it in a fancy, stylish cough that my grand ancestors were sworn through prayer to be my bidding for eternity. Meant that I would have to play Dungeon Master, the video game, but that the video game is being mapped out, and I don't understand what the holdup is on the map. Didn't we open the door already? Why can't we get in there? We have a directional pad, and now we're using it. Okay, now we're moving. This is interesting. This is not one with dead ends, is it? That there are things to turn and things to weave, and I don't think you just came for my beautiful, welcoming show. But if you've already caught out by now, maybe you did come only for my beautiful welcome act. But you would know Dungeon Master, the video game, is a hard one to master, or even be in this dungeon is hard. The Dungeon Mastery requires total dungeon mastery, and without dungeon mastery, you cannot master Dungeon Master. That there's paintings on the wall that look like things that I've never seen, people I've never met. That it's a strange code to get through this dead end, because you have to pick the right paintings at the right time. I hope you're getting all this. I hope you know that this is actually a game called Dungeon Master. What console it's on, I think computer. That we've been to Dungeon Master 2 is not to say that it doesn't follow us from Dungeon Master 1, and in our Dungeon Master, we can only go through one, hopefully. But that there will be a sequel is approaching to this Dungeon Master conundrum. This Dungeon Master foolery has been cranked to a halt at 14 minutes. But that we're only at minute 2 means that we have a long way through this dungeon, unless we skip ahead. But if we skip ahead, that means we'll be off balance with camera.
Yes, you are a priest wizard. Zed is kind of a little bit of everything.
All right, now we're getting somewhere. We don't need to look at those paintings much longer, and I'm sorry for the axe tilt. But if you look at all your items and your bonuses and your character chart, if you look at your character chart up top, and then the things you have optioned into your characters as to what they have, it looks like a game I used to play all the time. That there's someone out there, there's someone in Nuclear that had played this game that had reminded me of someone from Telluride, that had told him about the man from Nuclear who played this game non-stop, and this is a long game in that I've played it myself as a kid. Just means that technology used to be so outdated that it used to run better. The more outdated the technology, the greater it runs. That's why we have to quit at minute 14 as a technical difficulty, and that we will have a Dungeon Master epilogue is already foreshadowed in this return to filmmaking. And why can't Dungeon Master be longer? But that I'm going to jump on a limb and say, what if we quit before 14 and had a longer second episode, and then we wouldn't even be crying about the fact that it's split into 2 parts. Because if it's split into 2 parts and they're of equal length, don't you think that's a tidier menu than just switch them apart and only be 1 episode? The choice is yours. Roll the dice, and if you get 1 through 3, we'll go to 14 minutes and have a 5-minute addendum. Oh, you rolled a 4. I was talking to the man in here, not you at home. You at home can roll whatever you want. As long as you roll above a 2, you can proceed to the second half of this, which shall be at 10 minutes, and shall deal with the rest of the Dungeon Master video game. That we will have to skip to the end. By then, is not even a problem, because we're already only halfway done and barely through Dungeon 1. And if you see that I've amassed Dungeon Master and searches everywhere for my own show and its origin, what shows I've originated, and the Hitchhiker's Guide to Dungeon Master forgets what's going to happen in the Dungeon Masters past the character build-up, and that it only gives you the introduction dungeons, is why I think Dungeon 4 is the final journey, because it's the journey that tests you for character build. And as to character build, don't forget, you can go back through the dungeons that came before character build second time and gain many levels. There's no level ups in this Dungeon Master because that the characters here are leveling up. We must observe how they do it for a future game. If this is Dungeon Master 31, take note, because 31 is 13 backwards, and everybody knows that's the Freemasonry number of good luck, 13. That 31 is close to the 33, and 33 is the 33rd degree Mason, may be forgotten at Dungeon Master 33, but at least we know that the Freemasons prevail over Dungeon Master because that's all they ever do all day is play Dungeon Master. Not only this version, but this version, and my version, and the version we're making right now that you're watching later, but it will be right now for you, is the version of Dungeon Master, not to be confused with Dungeon Mastery, which you can only get from Hitchhiker's Guide to Dungeon Master from my version. And the Dungeon Master's Guide works just as good from any version. Now that you've explained all the ground rules again for these versions of Dungeon Master, may it be known that I don't own the market on Dungeon Master and that more people play these versions of Dungeon Master is considering that this is watching someone play and someone's talking about it, and it's making me a little nervous to see what will happen up front. And if up front we see something as exciting as getting food and water for all our characters, and that this is the child of nature, and that there's Stan, Zed, Syra, and Gothmog, and that Gothmog is the active character now, and that they're all at different partitions of the dungeon, means you have to set rocks around to see where you run back, and that there's a zombie we're not too concerned about. The zombies are not too concerning to us right now, that we need to go through this level and around this tunnel, and no dead end, no dead end. That I've seen... Oh, he's saying no false walls. Okay, what are you doing? Arguing with me? You gonna argue with me? That you're a Dungeon Master too doesn't relate to the fact that I'm an 1,000-year-old Dungeon Master. But I have existed longer than even the Amsterdam realistic version. That this version could have just as well been made in Japan makes me wonder if it's even been New Year's in Japan. Or has it been New Year's in Great Britain? Or who's keeping track of New Year's this year? India? Because it's not me, because my New Year's happened and everyone seems to think New Year's hasn't happened until noon, which is why Dungeon Master had to resolve with an extra healthy beacon of what you can agree on as the ultimate guide to what goes on in Dungeon Master history. And that we need to know that Dungeon Master 31 isn't just about Dungeon Master, but the spirit of the game. Things that fuel it, the things that get us through, that we're traveling through this maze in a way that's been conformed, but this maze is built so it could never be conformed. That there's no same way through mode. The same way through is only listed for those that aren't interactive. That you could shuffle these episodes in different levels as they aren't prerequisites one after the other, but one after the other would be the ideal method through, with there being so many and so ordered as they are after each other and before. But we will discuss more Dungeon Master politics and psychology, the only thing that sells us to all of our companies, like Wizards of the Coast. Politics, psychology, and it would be capitalism, but food and water seem to be good in Dungeon Master. The gold points and gold keys, look at that gold key that can unlock any door. That he has the key, he has the sword, he has the axe, and he has the club, is the reason we're going to take this up again. The Dungeon Master fans, please insert
Side B.